Okay, this video is about Move's pricing. In terms of transportation in general, I can't think of a workflow where customers are putting in information and then it's coming back to a company with a pricing that does not take into account both distance and duration. So, a time factor and a distance factor. If I look at this vehicle here, it's a 55 passenger charter bus. I priced it at $6.50 a mile and $250 an hour. And I have the base rate automation enabled. All of the quotes that I entered into the system that you're going to see, that we're going to go over, came from the booking tool. What I've noticed is that the one way and the round trip only take into account the distance, so the mileage. And the one way does not take into account the total mileage, right? The round trip takes into account each trip and says, okay, here's the total miles for each trip. But what if a trip has some hours in between, right? We would not have that available to us, right? So then you say, okay, let's solve that situation with an hourly, and then this takes in just the hours, right? But what if the miles, the total miles rate supersedes that of the hourly, right? So we need to take a look at some examples. Here's an example, BK80. This is a one-way transfer. It's picking up at 425 Park Avenue going to Virginia Beach. One way, it would be 7 hours, roughly. And if we look at the BRA, it's calculating correctly that one leg of the trip, not the other leg of it. Even though the vehicle is coming deadhead, so to speak, it doesn't have anyone in there. We're still, going to say that, we need the total here. So this price would need to be double for it to be accurate. Comparative pricing, in this case, doesn't seem like it's going to make a difference, right? Because 14 times 250, which is the, 7 hours there, 7 hours back, A to B to A, or garage to garage, whatever terminology you want to use. We're looking at 14 hours at $250, which is $3,500. Okay? That would not be equal to this number here, which is closer to 5,000. So let's show a round trip from the form, from the charter bus perspective, right? Where the bus is with the person the whole time. It's a round trip. This trip is broken into two legs. One leg of the trip is from 425 Park Avenue to Washington, D.C. Quite a common trip. And then we have them departing at 5 p.m. We have this duration time here, and then we have this BRA here, 1488. If you look at it, we have the total miles now, right? And even if we were to take a one-way trip, right, a one-way transfer, and make it look, like put a stop in there and then go back, we would have the total miles, but we're missing that hourly portion of the trip while they're in Washington, D.C. So this trip really, in reality, is 14 and a half hours. So if we look at this trip here, OPA2, this is a 14 and a half hour trip, right? And 425 Park Avenue, going to Washington, D.C., leaving, going back to 425 Park Avenue, and we look at the BRA, it's calculated hourly. So let's just go into the hourly here, okay? And if we look at it, we're asking the customer, I think a little bit too much here, right? We're saying, please, 14 and a half hours. Please tell us like how long it's going to take for travel time and how long you want to be there. I think it's a little bit too confusing. And in reality, hourly trips don't exist in pricing where you have a duration rate and a distance rate. There is no such thing as an hourly trip. It actually doesn't exist. And the reason why is if a vehicle is in Manhattan and it's doing 10 hours in Manhattan, so all those minimums are taken into account, we'll be looking at like this 10-hour trip in Manhattan, right? The miles, okay, the $6.50 a mile, times 10 is going to be like 60 bucks, right, for the driving, but this duration of 10 hours, okay, is really, the true price or the true customer reflected price, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be so much greater, right, when you're taking into the two. So you could just literally have, this round trip acting more as an hourly, right, if you're using the two. So it really just eliminates this whole hourly section. Another thing I noticed is in the stop, and this is true for one way, all of them. And we had, we spoke about the trip details form and other things. There's no departure time attached to a stop. And if you look here, right, we have Washington, D.C. If we just hit this button here, we have a stop date and time. I would love to see that on the, the consumer-facing portion, right? Stop date and time. And if we take a look at this trip, it is going to be $3,625, which is more money than the round trip that was inputted, right? These two numbers, okay? So now let's take a look, another, a close look at this trip again, the OPA2. We'll see that this is a 14 and a half hour trip. And if we just shorten the hourly duration, right, by just a little bit, let's say the whole trip is 11 hours, okay? We have this trip here, QXIE, and I'll put them in in an email, so you don't have to fish through all of these. And then the order that I say them in the video, we go like this. We have an 11-hour trip, and we calculated by the hours, so we're looking at $2,750, right? However, if a one-way trip to Washington, D.C. is 229 miles, let me just multiply that by 2, right? We're going to end up with 460. If we take that 460 and multiply it by $6.50, we're looking at $2,990 for that trip, right? So you need comparative pricing in this case to be able to get a real price, right? In the charter bus world, okay? If we're looking at it from a limo perspective, right, you would have a set rate for whenever the vehicle is in use, right? And for the luxury limo space, you're still looking at a round trip as, the vehicle's with the person. And, that's something to discuss. Just as very straightforward. They're going to have the vehicle for, they're going to go to this place, this place, this place, this place, whatever. So we need to know how that works from the, from the customer talking to the company perspective, okay? So I hope this sums that up. Really what we're looking for. I'll follow it up with an email. Thank you for your time.